Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Wake Up with Patti Catter. And of course, I'm your host, Patti Catter, and I have a special guest on the show today, John Bourgeois. Did I slaughter that, John?
Bourgeois. I'll help you on that
Oh.
one. No, it's all good. No, it's one of those names that I've just learned when I'm at DMV and I hear anything anywhere close to my last name, I raise my hand and I go up to the counter. So it's John Bourgeois. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, it really is because if you look at that, I could take it a lot of different ways. So
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
it's
It
exciting,
looks like
right?
Borgio is. It can be
Mhm.
said multiple different ways. Yeah,
I'll just call you John B. No.
that's a good one. Yep.
Uh, well, thank you, John, for being on the show. And I want our listeners to know right away that you have your own podcast and it's called the
I
Dreamcatchers.
Yeah, so I've got a top-rated Apple podcast called the Dreamcatchers Show,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's fun. It's been fun, extremely fun.
It's very interesting. Before we go there, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you came from, a little bit about your childhood so they can connect with you better before we get into your podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up on an island in the middle of the Pacific called Guam. Literally my winters were rainy and hot as those typhoons were rolling through. And then I moved over to Australia. I spent 7 years in Sydney. And then from there, moved again to Southern California and spent 5 years in Southern California. And then moved from there and spent another 5 years, or have spent another 5 years in Seattle. So I'm based out of Seattle. My story really, it's to sum it up real fast, is I spent 15 years in the corporate world, and I was training, leading, developing leaders, sales organizations, working with franchisees and business owners. And you'd think at the end of the day that I was having the time of my life. At the height of my career, I was overseeing 5 states, 293 locations. And I
Wow.
was entirely, Patty, I was entirely unhappy.
Mhm.
And the main reason I was unhappy was I had a dream that I had been sitting on for about a decade, and I just kept pushing it off because of all of the excuses I was telling myself.
Mhm.
And there was a defining moment for me that it was like, enough's enough. We're going to stop pushing off this dream. It's now or never. We're going to go ahead and go after our dream. And so, what originally started for me as just writing a book has evolved into this beautiful ability to create the Dreamcatchers community and the podcast from that, where we're tired of just chasing our dreams and we're now beginning to catch them. So
Mhm.
that's my story in a nutshell. We can dive any way you want to go from there.
Well, first of all, it's really hard to believe that you've been into business for that long because you look very young.
I do. Yeah. And here's the crazy thing, right? So, and I'm sorry, I digress, but I love digressing anyways. So your audience is going to get to hear all points of me. But when I shave and I
Mhm.
go in to get a bottle of wine, I will constantly have the manager, not the manager, I'll have the clerk hand it over to the manager. The manager will take a look at my ID. He'll twist it this way and that to make sure it's not one of those fake IDs. But yeah, I look a lot younger than I am. And on top of that, when I grow a beard,
Mhm.
I don't look as young, but you
Mhm.
know, baby face it is.
Yeah, I am really surprised. I actually thought that you were probably like early 20s, mid 20s, maybe at tops.
I'm not. I've got 4 kids.
No way.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
My
my,
eldest will be 10 this year.
what?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so when we're off the air, you can tell me how old you really are. Wow. Okay. So now it's going to even be hard for me to concentrate because I'm just trying to figure that out. But yeah. So what was the point then that you decided just to sit down and write a book? Let's go there first. And is it in
Yeah.
print or is it on an ebook? Or tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. So and funny enough, we actually got to have Patti on the Dreamcatchers show, and on that, I was sharing with you my grandmother.
Mhm.
She passed away in '96. She was a beautiful, absolutely beautiful woman. She was Irish, red hair, curly red hair, freckles all over, but just a gorgeous soul. And she was an English professor, and one of her dreams was to be an author. And sad to say, she was not able to publish any of her work that she had been working on before she passed away. It wasn't until like 10, 15 years after her death that we as a family finally published her work.
Wow.
And so, her being somebody that I looked up to
Mhm.
when I was younger, I always wanted to be an author. That's something that I always wanted to be.
Mhm.
I am an international best-selling author. Patty, not yet, but that is where I'm going, and that's what you see.
Mhm.
Okay. And so for me, it was something that I had constantly, I looked up to her. She passes away. And everybody around me kept saying, "Oh, you're not an author. You're way too energetic to be an author. Like, you can't sit in a room and be an author." Or, "John, authors never make money until they die, so why would you want to do that?" And one of my goals is to be like actually build financial wealth for my family and the generations to come. So it was like, oh, maybe I'm not an author. And I set up a traditional family, which is where I was the breadwinner for the family, and my wife went ahead and stayed home with the kids that we had. And I constantly just kept pushing off the dream. And it was, I will do this when I've got X,
Mhm.
when I've got the house, when I've got the car, when I've got this amount of money in the bank account, when I've got this title, when I'm overseeing 5 states, when I've got 293 locations under my belt, whatever, right? I kept just pushing off that dream. And honestly, it would never have happened if two things hadn't happened. The first being that relationship that I had been in. It was a 13-year relationship, ended up parting ways. And I went from having everything that I thought I needed to have to actually living in a 750 square foot apartment, no car, credit score shot, um, house was gone, money was gone, no furniture in the home at all, no bed. I didn't sleep on a bed for 8, 9 months. I slept on the floor, and I was utterly ashamed of who I was, and ashamed to even show my kids the apartment that I was in, because that's not who I wanted them thinking dad was. And the truth is, Patty, I didn't know who I was. And I only realized that after the separation, when we were going through counseling, that for me, I had gone ahead and I had developed my worth on two things: accomplishments and relationships.
Mhm.
Well, that's great when you have accomplishments and relationships. It's not so great when you don't. And I had to spend the next 3 years falling in love with myself, discovering who I was, discovering, who is John Bourgeois. I
Mhm.
know this is what you thought he was, but who is he really? And are you comfortable being in a space all by yourself? Nobody else is around. You don't have any of the accolades. You don't have any of the relationships. Are you comfortable just loving yourself?
Mhm.
And
Which
so,
is
to answer your
huge.
question, I had that happen. Yeah, I know I'm long winded. I apologize.
No, that's
Uh,
huge though. I mean, because people, they're a lot of them are codependent. I mean, let's get
yep.
real. Let's just get real.
And that's what I was.
Mhm.
And that's what I was. And I've always been somebody. I mean, I grew up with, sports, being highly competitive, being your A++ student, doing
Mhm.
your honor rolls, that sort of stuff. So, like, all of that stuff for me was my accolades.
Mhm.
I can get into this, I can get into that, I can make my way up through the corporate ladder, I can have this relationship, I can have this in the bank account, I can have the car, I can have all of that. That's who I thought it was. And had that pinnacle not happened, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because I'd keep pushing off the dream.
Mhm.
And so I have that happen to me where I don't know who I am. And I'm in this bare apartment, and I still can see it in my mind right now, literally 750 square feet, like nothing. And my grandfather ends up passing away. And man, Patti, I can see it right now walking down the aisle and seeing in front of me my grandfather's photo with the silver tin right next to it and the blue ribbon wrapped around it, and we are remembering his memory.
Mhm.
And it was like that. It was like literally, John, what are you going to do? Like you can continue to make your excuses and push this dream off for another 10 years,
Mhm.
or you don't know how much time you actually have got.
Mhm.
So it's now or never. Let's go.
Right. Right. That's true. None of us know how much time we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you hear older people, they'll say their biggest regret is not trying something that they wanted to do. So I'm sure that probably went through your head as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So um, you started this Dreamcatchers community on Facebook. We connected there. And
Yeah.
how can other people connect there? And what is your group about? Because obviously I know, but I want our listeners to know in your words.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So the whole reason for starting the show, the Dreamcatchers Show, was selfishly I wanted to be able to connect with other dream catchers like yourself, Patti. I wanted to be surrounded by people that didn't just daydream, but actually were action takers and were going after their dreams, whether they caught them or were still in the stage of catching them. I wanted to be surrounded with those type of people.
Mhm.
I also started the show because what I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to, and I know this isn't possible, but I can do it by speaking to my community. I wanted to be able to reach out to my 10-year younger self
Mhm.
and be basically have a conversation with my younger self and have that conversation of this is what you need to do to get where you want to go, because there's so many people that are doing exactly what I was doing. And so I wanted them to be able to go, you know, this will probably be released in 2020. I wanted 2020 to be your best year.
Mhm.
I wanted you to finally start writing the book, or finally lose the weight that you said you were going to do, or finally get the job that you said you were going to do, or finally start the business that you said you were going to do, or finally have the relationship that you said you were going to have. Like, stop pushing it off. Let's start now. Because I say this all the time. If I was going to travel over from Seattle to Michigan,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter whether I drive, fly, walk, hitchhike, teleport over there. It's still the same journey. It's still the same amount of miles that have to be covered. So if that's the case, and I know that doesn't matter what the dream is, doesn't matter how long you push it on, like you're still going to have to cover the same journey, the same amount of miles. Might as well start right now.
Mhm.
Plain and simple.
Yes, definitely. It's like taking a plane instead of walking there or driving Fred Flintstone's car.
That's right. Yes.
So if you're younger and you're listening to this, take that advice.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And if you don't know who Fred Flintstone is, go ahead,
Right.
grab your cassette tape and your VHS, and then make sure you press rewind, and you should be able to see it.
Yeah. Did I just date myself there?
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
Uh, Wow. Well, John, thank you for your insight and your information about your group and your book. And so I did ask you, is your book available in print or is it an ebook? Where can we find it?
Yeah, so actually, the really cool thing is it's going to be being launched in January, the end of January. It will be both Kindle, so ebook, as well as print. But yeah, it's going to be called The Pen and Its Author. And if you're at all familiar with The Alchemist, It's going to be a marriage between fiction and nonfiction in the form of a fable, so that as you read it, you're being able to learn.
Wow, that is amazing. That is really cool. I like that. Uh, well, thank you so much for joining me on this show. Is there
Thanks for
anything?
having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is there anything you'd like to just throw out there to the listeners? I do want you to share all your social media links too, please.
Absolutely. So the only thing that I would say to you is this. Definitely the best place to connect with me is going to be the Dreamcatchers Show. You can find me on any sort of podcast platform. So whether that's Spotify, Google Podcast, or Apple, you can find me on all of them. If you feel you are a dream catcher, whether you're in the middle of your dream, you've caught your dream, or you're just trying to catch it, I would love to connect with you. And I would love to hear what the dream is and hear what maybe some of the obstacles are that you're going through. Find me on social. They're all going to be the exact same. It's going to be John C. Bourgeois. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you can find me on all of them. Let me know what your dream is, and I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. And we're going to be sharing the notes if you're driving or if you can't write it down really quick. We're going to have it in the notes, all John's social media. We're going to have it linked on this video that you're watching. And I just am really excited for you all to connect with John. You all know that my guests are very inspirational and motivating. And I've connected with John. I was on his show recently, and we're going to be definitely keeping in contact with him. So I definitely agree with what he's doing, and I would love it if you went to his social media and connected with him.
Awesome. Thanks, Patti, again for having me.
Thank you, John. And thank you all for listening. And don't forget to follow me on social media and tune in again next Friday at 5 a.m. The show airs, but it's available all the time after that.